When you think of Warbreaker, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Is it the magic of Breaths and BioChroma? Is it Lightsong's witticisms, Vasher's mystique, or Nightblood's strange personality? For me, it's Vivenna. Vivenna, the astute, obedient princess turned Awakener who flees to the city of Titalia to save her sister's life. But why? Why is Vivenna who I think about when I think of Warbreaker? Well, quite simply, I believe the story is undeniably her story. Of course I enjoy reading about Ciri and Lightsong. Vasher, while mysterious, is engaging in each of his chapters as well. But Vivenna just steals the show, in my opinion. Allow me to explain. If we look at the four main characters and their roles, we'll soon realize just why Vivenna captivates more than the rest. Let's take Ciri to start with. She's a reckless wild child who regularly absconds from following the rules. She is sent to Halandren in her sister's stead when the king has a last-minute change of heart. Through her strong personality, she faces the holy Halandren court of gods and manages not only to face the god king, but ultimately unveil and warn him about the plot against him. Now, when I first read Warbreaker, I enjoyed Ciri's chapters more than Vivenna's because she was the one who got to see Titalia first and because she engaged with the court more. The only problem I have with Ciri is that her character progression is quite minimal. Yes, she does become more assertive and starts to take control of the situation more, once she gets over the initial shock, of course, of having all her freedom taken from her by force of marriage. But in the end, she's mostly still the same Ciri we saw in the beginning, though likely with a bit more life experience. Well, next let's take Lightsong. Lightsong is the most enjoyable to read for his snarky wit and humorous displays of disregard for the opinions of the other gods. His chemistry with Larimar is brilliant and his ability to throw out one-liners unmatched. He also sees some character progression, but not as much as I would have liked. He goes from an almost childish irreverence for the religion and government he forms a part of, to a man that discovers more about himself and actually takes action to prevent what he fears will be the undoing of his nation. Unfortunately, this is just shy of the mark for what I would have liked to see for his character and development. Had we perhaps had another 10 or so chapters, I may have felt differently. But unfortunately, his time with us, the reader, was cut short at the end. Next we have Vasher. Vasher is an enigma. Well, he is at first. Initially, one doesn't exactly know what to make of this mysterious Awakener who at once seems to be a good person, but at the same time has no scruples about having to kill one of the main cast he believes is working against him. And when we finally find out who he really is, it blows things wide open and leaves more questions unanswered, but in a good way, don't get me wrong. Vasher sees very little, if any, character growth. And while this is more than likely a good thing for the kind of character he's supposed to be, it still means there is a disconnect between the reader and Vasher. For a reader to connect with a character, the reader must empathize with the character and their plight. And the most effective tool for this is to have the reader witness the ways in which the character changes throughout the story. It allows the reader insight into the character's head and allows the reader to better understand the actions and motivations behind a character. And in Warbreaker, we see no character change as much as we do Vivenna. But change is only part of the equation. The need to change is the catalyst, yes. But the vehicle for the change, the actual means by which the character does change, is what makes all the difference. This is where I'd like to talk about what I call protagging. A protagonist is the character that takes the most positive action in a story. And note that positive action does not necessarily mean good or right. Positive action is what moves the plot of a story along, moves it forward. And a well-written protagonist will drive that positive action to the story's conclusion. An antagonist will of course counter the protagonist with negative action to create friction. To get back to my point, protagging is when a character embodies that ideal protagonist and acts with the most positive action whilst also enabling the change needed for empathy to occur between them and the reader. And let me tell you, Vivenna protags like nobody else in this book. Yes, Ciri takes action and starts secretly working with Susebron to find out what the priests are up to. Yes, Lightsong takes action and starts working with Blushweaver to not only protect his kingdom, but discover the secrets of his past. And yes, while we see very little of it, Vasher also takes action to prevent the coming war. But not a single one does it as well as Vivenna does. let's examine just what Vivenna does. When we first meet Vivenna, she's the prim and proper eldest daughter of a king. She has strong Idrian ideals, is a devout follower of Austrism, and is strongly against the Halandran way of life. From the outset, her perception of how the world works and how it actually works is in direct conflict. She meets Denth and Tonkfa, two mercenaries who not only challenge her ideas of what mercenaries are like, but also eventually teach her the hardest lesson in who she can and cannot trust. The Idrian agent her father had in the city then reveals to have committed not only the most heinous blasphemy against her religion, but was also doing it for the good of her kingdom. She had to reconcile the use of breaths as a mortal sin with the utility it provided to actually achieve her goals. Then, after having gone through all this, she doesn't just wallow in her despair. She doesn't sulk because the world turned out to be more complex than the plain black and white thinking she had grown accustomed to. No, she takes action. Though hesitantly at first, she eventually decides that she will use the gold and breath she has to undermine the Halandran government and to put a dent in their ability to wage war with her people. She meets with crime lords, sabotages trade, forges documents, creates a public disturbance, and meets with immigrant Idrian slumlords to further her cause. Even once she discovers she's been betrayed by Denth, she doesn't just give up. She meets Vasher and is determined to make a difference by meeting with community leaders and learning how to use her newfound awakening abilities. By the time we near the climax of the story, she's not the same princess that we once knew. She went from an intimidated Orthodox girl to a strong young woman that could stand on her own and use her own resourcefulness to overcome any obstacle that came in her way. We saw her go through different emotions ranging from intimidated, scared, angry, defiant, hateful, sorrowful, uncertain, proud, triumphant, and everything in between. As a reader, you experienced a journey with her that no other character provided. She outshines every other viewpoint character in this regard. Is it any wonder she's the first character that comes to mind when I think of Warbreaker? While I deeply love and appreciate all the characters in the novel, there is just one that I can say really pro-tagged the hardest, and that is Vivenna. She became the best character throughout the book, and I don't think the book would have been nearly as good without her. All in all, I honestly think this is why Warbreaker is truly Vivenna's story. But of course, that's just my opinion, and if you disagree with me, or even agree with me, I'd love to hear about it. Just let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and if you'd like to see more, please feel free to subscribe. I'll be uploading videos like this on fantasy books and fantasy literature in general about twice a week, so please stick around, and I'll see you next time.